Welcome to the Health Science Coach Podcast. My name is Drew Garner. I am a health science and physical education teacher here at Turner High School. My objective is to provide information to students about different healthcare careers and explain how these professionals got to where they are in their careers. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now let's dig in. Today we get the pleasure of meeting with Savannah Arroyo. She is a registered nurse and an assistant manager at Providence Medical Institute. Welcome, Savannah. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you're joining us from California. We were just talking about the weather out there compared to here in Kansas. Fall is starting to get kind of nice for us, but you guys definitely have a little bit better seasons yearly for the beach.
I do love Cali. I'm a Cali girl at heart, and I think I always will be.
Awesome. So you are a registered nurse and an assistant manager. Let's kind of just talk about your daily duties and daily experiences that you go through.
Yeah, definitely. So, really, as a nurse, there's so many different specialties. So it really depends on kind of what department you're working in. I've worked in a bunch of different departments. I've worked on med surge, which is your standard inpatient floor at a hospital where you're dealing with patients with all sorts of diseases and illnesses. That's really kind of the standard med surge floor. I worked in med surge. I also did pre-op and recovery. So I was taking care of patients before and after they had surgery. I worked on an oncology floor for a little bit. So dealing with cancer patients, new diagnosis, patients receiving chemo and radiation for the first time and taking care of them even at their end of life at hospice and kind of comfort care measures. Did that for a little bit. That was pretty tough. And then I switched into management. I did do ambulatory care for a little bit in an orthopedic office. So I was overseeing clinical aspects of pretty much a doctor's office and helping kind of navigate with the physicians and the staff to do the clinical support there. And then I ended up going into administration and in management, mainly because I love leading teams. I love being able to support nurses throughout different things that they're encountering on a day-to-day. So I've worked in a bunch of different settings in healthcare as a nurse.
That's cool. So, looking at your career of education, you have your undergraduate degree and you have your master's degree. When you went in for your undergraduate degree, did you know that you wanted to be a nurse right off the bat, or how did you kind of fall into nursing school?
Yeah, I really knew in high school. It was a point where I had a friend in high school who was playing baseball and got hit by the ball, had to be hospitalized, and for a long time in ICU, really bad condition. And we were visiting him, and I remember going into the hospital. I think that was one of the first times I had been in a hospital. I just had never really been around a hospital until then in high school, and going into it and just being like, almost scared of all of the equipment and what was going on and like the unknowing of what, even the smell of the hospital and stuff, like kind of scared me. But in a sense, like as I started seeing like the nurses and what they were doing and taking care of my friend and just how they were interacting with the family and being able to provide comfort and care and coordinating the care, talking to the physicians, I realized like, wow, I want to do this. I want to be a nurse. And so I knew really out of high school, like my high school had an ROP program, like kind of a transition for healthcare people where I got to take off like a couple hours every day and just like hang out at a hospital or a doctor's office with some people. And so I kind of got my feet wet in different like volunteer positions or just being around a hospital so I could kind of see whether or not I really did want to move forward with it. So yeah, going into college, I knew I wanted to go into nursing. So I started knocking out those prerequisites right away.
Okay. So you studied at California State University, Sacramento, and got your bachelor's of science in nursing there. What did that program kind of look like, going through freshman through senior year?
Yeah. So, nursing is very competitive. It's very competitive in California. There's a lot of people wanting to do it, but there are a lot of schools that cater to it. So if you're thinking about doing nursing, you really need to learn about which schools are accredited nursing schools and which ones are actually going to gear you towards taking your RN or LVN licensure test. So for me up in Sacramento, there was the community college route where you could go and you can get your AA degree or 2-year degree. And then most of those schools schools have a transition into bachelor's programs. And then there was the university where it had kind of the straight through 4-year program. So my mindset was, okay, it's going to be competitive. Once it comes time, I'm going to apply to a bunch of different nursing schools, but you have to get your prerequisites done first. So I was looking at in California, Chico, San Diego, Sacramento. I was looking at all these nursing programs and looking at their requirements. So I would go onto their websites, look at nursing school. I literally went and printed every single one of them from the schools. And I sat down and looked at like, okay, what sciences do I need to take to get into this school? What critical thinking courses, what English course do I need to take statistics? And then from there, I was able to plan out, because although when you get into college, you have like your major, but for nursing, you're like a pre-nursing major because you're not in the nursing program yet. So you don't really have a claimed major. You just need to start taking your courses. And because it's so science heavy, I knew right away, and I heard from other people, you need to start taking the sciences immediately because they're heavy classes. You can only take one a semester, and it takes almost 2 years just to get through the sciences. So I kind of mapped out what classes I needed to take. And so when it came time to registering for my classes, I just started doing it based on the requirements for the nursing school.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So when you were at Sacramento, how did you schedule your nurse classes versus your undergrad classes versus like throughout like clinicals or rotation, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So the prerequisite is what they call them for nursing school. I would make sure when it came time to register for classes that I would at least have like 2 to 3 of these prerequisites. And then in order to get enough credits for my majors, I would have to take like other classes from different categories. And I remember I would just take the easiest class, or like what I thought was going to be an easy class,
Yeah.
like, an RPTA class where I'm just learning about like nature and different parks and rec stuff, or doing things like that. So I would take like easier, fun classes to kind of offset what I was doing with nursing. Um, yeah, and then that's kind of like how I balanced my schedule.
Absolutely. So then after you got your bachelor's degree, you got your master's as well. Did you go straight into that program or did you work while you were getting it? How did that kind of coincide?
Yeah, so I graduated from nursing school and it was super, super competitive to even get a job at this point. So now you make it through nursing program and then it's like, hey, good luck trying to find a job, right? So it took me 10 months to find a job and I was going stir crazy. I was applying for out of city ones. I was looking through Central California and Southern California because at the time I was living in Northern California. I was willing to relocate, and it took me 10 months to find a job. So in the meantime, at like a 6-month mark, I was like, all right, I like leadership type stuff. I'm going to move forward and get my master's. And so I started going through the master's program at the same time. And then I landed a job. So then I was working 3 12-hour shifts, night shift at a hospital, and then pretty much doing school the rest of the time. It was pretty difficult.
Yeah. How did you choose Walden University for your master's while you were working? You said your 3-day, 12-hour shifts. How did that kind of work out for you, and why did you choose Walden?
Yeah, so when you get to your master's level of nursing, you can really go 3 routes. You can go leadership administration, which is management, or you can go education, which is like teaching nurses, wanting to be a nursing professor, doing clinicals with new nurses, PhD
Right.
type research stuff. And then the third one is informatics. So they have a whole nursing specialty for like technology and programming and electronic health records and all the technology that goes behind what happens in a hospital. The majority of that is ran by nurses. And the cool thing I learned when I was going through nursing school is the majority of a hospital is ran by nurses. Every single department in a hospital is ran by a nurse. The CNO is the chief nursing officer. That is also a nurse. So when you start looking into all the opportunities within nursing, there's so many. Like, not only is there so many specialties within nursing that you can work in, but there's so many different levels of nursing, which is what I loved. Like, I felt like going into it, if there was something I didn't like if I went into labor and delivery and was delivering babies. And I was like, I didn't like this. And I could totally go over here and deal with, pediatrics, or you can go over here and deal with adults or orthopedics, or you can do surgery. And so I chose the master's in leadership mainly because it was online. So Walden University offered online courses, which was really kind of what I needed to work with my schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So for that master's program, how many hours was it, and what type of course loads did you have?
So the master's level programs are geared for people who are working. So they
Yeah.
understand that the majority of the people that are coming into the master's programs are maintaining a full-time job. So it's not as heavy as the undergrad degree is. So I think I was taking 6 credits at a time, which was 2 classes. It was, maybe like 15 10 hours a week or so that I was doing about to trek through the master's program.
Right. So you had mentioned a little bit earlier about, being on the different teams of different like oncology or surgery specialties. So your looks like your first job out of being a nurse, registered nurse at Sutter Health on oncology. Let's talk a little bit about some of your roles that you did there while you were working there.
Yeah. So coming out as a new grad, although you have been very prepared for nursing, it's still a big learning curve coming in as a new nurse in a hospital. So a lot of the hospitals now do kind of like new grad programs or transition into practice programs. Almost every organization I've worked for, they have a special program for new nurses, and they pair you do additional educational stuff through online platforms, and then they pair you with a seasoned veteran nurse who's willing to teach. And you kind of go through side by side with this nurse for I did it 12 weeks in the beginning as a new grad nurse. Some of them are 6, some are even longer, 6 months if it's like a very hardcore, like ICU specialty. So you're with another nurse working side by side, which is awesome. You're learning how to do it. So like a day to day nursing on a med surg floor, you're coming in, assessing your patients, learning their history, what medications they're on, what illness they're dealing with. Are they having any upcoming surgery? You're looking at kind of the whole system level of the patient as a whole. What medications they're getting? Are they getting any breathing treatments? Do they have labs drawn? Is anything happening throughout the day? And as a nurse, you are coordinating all that care for the patient. You have your patient, and no matter where the patient goes in the hospital, if they're going to get an MRI, if they're going to get, a G tube, like you're the head nurse in the primary care, so you're coordinating all the aspects of the care. And depending on your level, what floor you're on, you could have 4 nurses, or like ICU, you have 1 to 2 patients because they're very, very sick. Or, on the more less acute floors, you may have like 4 to 5 patients in a day. So coordinating really all aspects of their care.
Yeah, absolutely. So after you worked there for about a year, a little over, it looks like you went ahead and moved over to the specialty surgery center. How did that kind of transfer? And a lot of the students that I talk with talk about, you don't have to just have one job for their whole career. So a lot of kids, I feel like, think that once you're hired by a company, you stay with that company and for your entire lifespan. I mean, you've had 4 or 5 different experiences
Yeah.
with different companies and being a nurse. Let's kind of talk about the process of how that kind of changes and develops.
Yeah, definitely. So that first job I was doing oncology and dealing with very sick patients. I was a new nurse, young. I think I was like 24, 25 at the time, and I was like body bagging patients on a weekly basis, which was very difficult. It was hard. It was an honor as a nurse to be able to be with these patients like during their last moments and with their family members, but it was a very difficult job. And so I ended up moving down to LA. and going into more of a med surge job. And at the time, I was very motivated to buy a house. And in LA, that takes a lot of extra shifts. So the cool thing about nursing is, I had my 3 12-hour shifts. And so I had 4 other days during the week where I ended up getting a per diem job, which is just kind of like as needed whenever you want to work, you can work. And I did
Right.
that at a surgery center. And then I would just pick up extra shifts, usually get paid more as a nurse too when you're doing per diem work because you're as needed. So then I was doing that to generate a lot of extra income to be able to buy a house. And like you said, I have had a bunch of different jobs, even in the short time that I've been a nurse, like 8 years. But that's because, different things have happened in my life, and I've continued to grow kind of as a leader within healthcare. And so I've taken on different roles within organizations that are really, a lot of organizations are really motivated to help their nurses grow. And so I took advantage of that in the organizations I was working at.
Yeah, absolutely. So going from an RN to a RN supervisor to an assistant manager, kind of that process, like you said, with the leadership and development of the staff. Kind of what is the kind of differences between a registered nurse supervisor and an assistant manager?
Yeah, so a lot less patient care. When you're a bedside nurse, you're dealing with your patients all day. You're with patients pretty much all day in every single specialty. And so, as a nurse administrator, now I'm in a position. So right now, I have 6 different departments in a hospital. I have like 65 nurses and techs, and so now I help them with whatever they need with their job. So if something's going on and they have a difficult patient or a difficult doctor or a difficult family member and they can't put out the fire, I'm going over there to help them. If they have a machine in one of our departments that breaks down and they're too busy with patients to deal with it, I'm going over there and calling people and helping them cater to it. If they have questions in how they're charting, I'm helping them. I'm really a big resource. Pretty much I go into work and I problem solve and put out fires all day from the minute I walk in. But I love collaborating with my team, and I am able to, like, if we're super short staff, I jump in and I help do patient care or help transport patients and do that sort of stuff. So it's really more of like a process improvement type thing too. So if there's different like initiatives that are being pushed into the hospital, like say, we have a new doctor that's going to be operating in one of our departments. I'm helping now get that doctor onboarded, help learning their protocols, help teaching that now to the staff of how these doctors work. So there's a lot more administrative, like logistical stuff that goes into management.
Okay, and that kind of coincides like what you talked about your masters doing the leadership type stuff and being able to still have your team that you work with and also work with those patients when needed. That's pretty cool. So becoming a nurse, were very passionate, looking into high school, seeing the care and responsibility of your friend being taken care of. Um, what is the one thing that you really love about your job being a nurse?
I love that there's so much variety in it. I love that if for some reason I hated my job and something were to happen, I know that I could go and get a job somewhere else very easily. Nursing is always high in demand. You can do and go so many places with it. I feel like there's constant opportunity, and because I've been able to work at a lot of different organizations, I've got to like interact with a lot of cool people, like a lot of amazing nurses and a lot of amazing doctors, like building relationships. And because, if you're working 40 hours a week somewhere, you want it to be somewhere you like. And nursing provides the flexibility and kind of the variation that has always made me really happy.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's kind of that personal rewarding, being able to help others, that kind of stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's some kind of misconceptions about nurses or maybe a nurse manager that you see in the industry?
Oh, a misconception. I think that all nurses are the same. I think that there's a lot of different specialties that people don't realize. And I'll hear people, say something about, oh, I talked to this nurse and they didn't know something about my dad's pacemaker. And it's like, okay, well, nurses are very specialized. Like the nurses that are delivering babies don't necessarily know a lot about, what goes on in the cath lab. And so it's a completely different skill set and patient. And so really just how different the specialties are. Like, a labor and delivery nurse won't be able to go and work in the ICU. It's not without learning, another 4 months of specialized training. It's not as overlapped and fluid as most people think.
Yeah, I kind of feel that same way about teaching.
Yeah.
Student will ask me something about math, and I'll be like, I'll try. I don't know the answer. I'm not the math. So I feel like that's kind of the same thing. So looking at your career in nursing and becoming a manager and getting your master's, what's something that you're really proud of accomplishing?
Um, Really just kind of growth, I think. I was met, like, I remember in high school going into the college and picking out pre-nursing as my degree, and people were like, all right, well, you need to pick up a backup degree because chances are you won't get into it. Like it's very competitive. And just knowing, like, I knew deep down, like, I want to be a nurse. Like I wanted to be a nurse so bad. And so really just kind of sticking through what it takes to get there. And like, if anyone's wanting to be a nurse, like, look at the blueprint and what steps you need to take to get there, and just do them. If you do them, chances are you'll get there.
And then, do you have anything you regret not doing so far in your career?
Not necessarily. I mean, sometimes I do miss patient care. I mean, like you mentioned, like us nurses, we get into it because we love that patient interaction, caring for patients. Like although I don't miss body bagging patients every day, like being it, like I will never forget holding patients' hands as they were dying. Like I will never forget that feeling. And so I have given that up moving into administration. So there are days where I love, like, oh, I go over to like one of my departments and I'm like, can I help with something? Can I start an IV, or can I like help bring in a patient, just to like be able to get that personal connection again.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a nurse and a assistant manager, staff member, what are some of the types of professional development nurses need to do to stay up on their credentials?
Yeah, definitely continuing education. So stuff is always changing in the healthcare world. There's new medications, there's new surgeries, there's new medical equipment and devices. So we do regular continuing education where we're staying up to date on that kind of stuff. There's always new protocols that are being implemented. And so really being flexible with the change, the constant change that is in healthcare is, I think, kind of a learning curve for some people who aren't used to that inconsistency type stuff. It is a job where things are very unpredictable. So knowing that coming into it and having that flexibility is super, super important.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about a little bit kind of those trends and things coming in, new stuff, and with the professional development. What are some of the current industry trends that you're seeing in nursing?
Yeah, well, there's a lot, right? We just went through a global pandemic. So, it was very crazy to be in a hospital while all that stuff was going on and seeing what was happening. So, patients are coming into the hospital very, very sick. They're sick patients that's very unstable. So as a nurse, you have a very high responsibility caring for these patients. Healthcare as a whole is changing and progressing to do a lot more preventative care, which is amazing. Being able to see that in some of our suites in my cath lab and my GI lab, we do a lot of different preventative procedures, which are really cool, and really kind of transitioning healthcare into a more community-based environment with like ambulatory care, which was a really cool experience for me to be able to go into ambulatory care. So a hospital is called acute care. And then you have ambulatory care, which is like doctor's offices and kind of that sort of stuff. So being able to work in that setting as a nurse was super eye-opening to all the stuff that you can do as a nurse and in healthcare to help patients and prevent them from getting into the hospital. So, when I was working with an orthopedic practice, a lot of patients were having surgery. They'd call with different like the infection concerns or things that were going wrong. And it was such a cool role to be able to be that person to help either encourage that patient to go to the ER and potentially get checked out by the hospital,
Right.
or help just reassure them, walk them through a dressing change, have them come into our office and do that for them to prevent them from getting into the hospital.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Being able to prevent the need for the hospital through the ambulatory care is pretty important. Now, personally, let's think about some of your personal development. We talked about 3 days a week, 12-hour days, and having some of that stress management, dealing with when you're on the oncology floor and body bagging. What are some of the things you use personally for your personal development and maybe stress management or that kind of stuff?
Definitely exercise. That's my number one. I was pretty an athlete like growing up my whole life. And so really working out and just physical activity has always been big for me, but especially big when you're working and doing work-life balance. It's a good stress reliever. It helps you mentally. Like I cannot preach on that enough. Meditation. I'm a huge proponent and advocate of meditating just 10 minutes every day. That definitely helps me. And you realize as a nurse how important it is to take care of yourself. Like there are times after working a 12-hour night shift where in the morning I just like stop and get Taco Bell in the morning and go home and veg out and just like crash, like couldn't even move, so exhausted from work. But then you realize you really got to start if you're taking care of patients all day, it's so depleting, like not even physically, but just emotionally, mentally. So it is super, super important to take care of yourself.
Right. So with that, thinking about some of your career goals you've set, you've been in a nurse for now about 8 years or so. What are some more career goals that you have for yourself?
Yeah, definitely continue to grow as a nurse. The cool thing about nursing is you can come in and be a bedside nurse, make good money, and just like hang out there if you want. I've always had a very strong like entrepreneur growth mindset. And so I've always wanted to like take on leadership roles, help people out just really naturally, and have been put into these positions where I've now taken on additional education by getting like my master's and different trainings that you get when you're push through as a nurse leader. So, really, a lot of my goals and growth come from being able to continually give back to nurses. Like I got into real estate investing, and now I launched my brand, the Networth Nurse, to really give back to nurses in the community as a whole, of like educating nurses on finances and investing and how to grow their wealth. Like that's something that nurses and even a lot of doctors come out of med school and nursing school, like knowing a lot about the body and how to heal people, but they don't know anything about finances. And so now that's like a huge passion of mine, is being able to give back to my nurses and educate them about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about what the net worth nurse is and what you do with that as kind of your side fun project, being, giving back to the nurses and showing them, how to take care of their finances as well.
Yeah, definitely. So I started real estate investing because I had just had my second daughter and was realizing I had to go back to work and didn't necessarily want to go back to work, and realized that if I didn't go back to work, I wouldn't be getting a paycheck. And really, that concept was so discouraging and defeating that I was like, I need to figure out ways to start investing and growing my wealth so I don't have to be relying on a job for the rest of my life. And so I started learning about real estate investing, different ways to grow your wealth through that. And then as I started doing it and started talking to a lot of other nurses, or like I would just come into work and be like, oh, hey, I looked at real estate properties this weekend. Or they'd be like, what are you doing next weekend? It's like, oh, I'm flying up to Oregon to like look at an apartment complex we're going to buy. And, I'd get a lot of interest, and then I'd start having conversations and asking nurses like, what are they doing to either invest or save for retirement or really just to grow their wealth? And none of them are really doing anything. People don't know about a lot of that stuff and how to do it and where to start. And so I launched the Networth Nurse to really have a platform where I have YouTube videos and blogs and, all my social media accounts, where now I'm sharing with nurses how to do this. And I'm in the process of like writing a book about real estate investing for nurses, and building courses and doing a coaching program to really, really give back on that education piece.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's something a lot of people, you take maybe one personal finance class in high school, and then you come out of high school and you may not take another finance class unless you're a business major in college. And so being able to understand and comprehend that aspect of your life, I think, is something that really gets skipped over. And especially with nurses and doctors, you said, knowing a whole bunch of information, but not knowing how to save for your retirement is something that's pretty important.
Yeah.
So kind of on that same path, is there something that you wish you would have known in high school or maybe early in your college career that would have helped you with your career path now?
In regards to the investing stuff, yes, like definitely learning about ways that you can generate income. I mean, so for me, investing and growing my wealth, that means more time freedom for me and time freedom for my family and having the financial freedom. Like, it's not all about money, it's what money gives you in terms of like more freedom in your life, or even being able to help out family members, or give a better life for your kids or your family. So for me, it was very motivated in that sense. And so just kind of, I guess I wish I would have learned that sooner, that you can have a lot more control. People don't think they can have control over their financial destiny. They think like, I don't have money, I'm never going to have money, or I'm in this position where like I don't have the resources to start investing or growing wealth. Like my husband and I didn't have any money when we started investing in real estate. We got creative about tapping into different resources to get money to start investing in real estate. We were so motivated. So learning about investing as a whole and different ways that you can start making your money work for you, because the sooner you start making your money work for you, the less work you'll have to do in your lifetime. So that's probably one thing I wish I would have learned sooner.
Yeah. So kind of piggybacking off of that, I just had a conversation with a student, I think last week, about they're starting to look at colleges and universities or junior colleges, the 2-year programs. We kind of talked about student loans and grants and how to look for that. As you said, if you don't have money to start, how do you get money to pay for the things that you need? With going into nursing and, the junior college route to get your associates before you get your bachelor's, what are some things that you might recommend for younger students getting into college about, their finances with student loans, and then, right after they graduate with those?
Yeah. So I took out student loans for sure to pay for my undergrad and for my master's degree. The good thing is that right when I got my nurse as a new grad, I was making good money, and I've never made money like that. And so I was able to still live very frugally and pay all those student loans off very quickly. But I would say, like, if that's kind of a roadblock and you're thinking like, oh, I have to go to University of San Diego to get my nursing degree, I don't want to go to a community college. Like, at the end of the day, a nurse is a nurse. If you have that RN license, whether you get that from an associate school, a community college, or whether you get that from a 4-year university, like, it really doesn't matter. People can get very caught up in wanting to go to a prestigious school or going to a college that you think looks good. Like, in my nursing career, not once has anyone ever asked me what school I got my degree from. It doesn't matter. You get your nursing license, and I work with a bunch of amazing nurses who literally just got their 2-year associate's degree from a community college, got their RN license, and they're right there working with nurses with a 4-year degree. So do not get caught up into the whole prestigious aspect of college, do what's right for you to financially get through. And taking out loans and debt is not necessarily a bad thing if it helps you get to your end goal and create a better future for yourself. Student loans are good debt. They're not credit card debt. It's not going out and buying a car you can't afford. It's good debt that'll help you reach your goals. And so when you reframe it and look at it in that mindset, it doesn't feel as heavy.
Yeah, kind of like you're taking a loan out on yourself to get the education to further pursue your job. That's pretty good way of looking at it. So books and college and high school students, a lot of nursing books are pretty heavy reads. Do you have any personal books that you might like to recommend to a high school or college student that's interested in becoming a nurse?
Yeah, I would say I don't really know any books right off the top of my head. I know that there are a couple, I can't think of the name of them, but podcasts are amazing. You can listen to them while you're working out, driving, whenever, cleaning your room, doing laundry. Um, there's a bunch of nurses who do podcasts where other nurses come on and talk about like what they're doing in their specialty, and it's super cool because a lot of them have gotten really creative of like starting their own businesses, and they do like IV infusion nurses, or they'll talk to nurses in informatics and nurses who are educators. And podcasts are an amazing way of start learning about different specialties and really what it takes to be a nurse and kind of how nurses think and what they're like.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's pretty cool. What's something that you use on your daily basis that helps you with your job duties of being a nurse? A lot of people might think stethoscope or, othioscope, but what's something that's really special for you guys?
Definitely a good pen. Like a good pen is everything as a nurse. It's like an inside joke that if people leave with your good pen on the unit, that you're like out to get them. So that we use like an organizational tool, as it's called a brain. Like that's what it was called when I was in college and nursing school, is really like when you get to work and you have your patient load, you're writing down on your brain like systemically like what's going on, what meds are due, and you kind of like organize your day based on that. And that's really like every day you're getting in with your brain and writing down like your patients and what you need to do for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So couple more questions. This one is a two-part question. It's kind of a if you do like or if you dislike. So if you dislike blank, then being a nurse is not for you.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like the obvious one is blood, because you're gonna encounter that. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a big fan of wounds. Like I do not like wounds. And when I would have to deal with patients with like deep wounds that you had to like clean and debride, like my stomach would churn. Just thinking about it and talking about it is making my stomach churn. But it doesn't mean you can't be a nurse, right? Like there's different, I mean, especially in the hospital, there's like wound nurses and there's different people that kind of help with stuff. But if you don't like blood at all, then you're probably going to have an issue. And I don't like needles. Like I freak out when I get my blood drawn. Like I get sweaty and I can't look, and the smell of alcohol when someone drawing my blood makes me like freak out. But I go out and I draw blood and start IVs like all the time. So just because you don't like being the patient doesn't mean you won't be a good nurse.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. I like that a lot. Second part of that is if you do like blank, then being a nurse is the right career path for you.
If you like helping people, not a day goes by, even in administration, where you're not helping people. And, these people are coming from a place of pain, of they're terrified, they're scared, they don't know what's going on in all my departments. And being able to be there with someone and literally just like have a hand on their shoulder, or hold their hand, like if you like helping people, you will be able to do that every day as a nurse.
Yeah, I mean, being able to be there and care for somebody is a big part of that. And that's good. Last one I have for you before we let you go, and mantra or quote that you live by that helps you, strive to be your best.
Ooh, okay. I have one like literally above my desk. It's a Tony Robbins quote. I'm a Tony Robbins junkie. If you don't know about him, check out his stuff. He's amazing. He's really got me through a lot of tough things in life. But it is in the moments of decision that your destiny is shaped.
That's awesome. That's really powerful. Good. Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. We really appreciate it, and I really am excited to get this out and share with our students about, all the different paths of being a nurse and the importance of, helping people and being there to care for them.
Yes, I know it's been a while since I was in nursing school, but not long enough ago that I forget what it was like. So, if anyone's interested, you can reach out to me on social media. I can talk you through anything about nursing.
Thank you so much. That's really a big help.